Kate Hudson zooms into a chilling Google Maps image. Her daughter, Emily, stolen, led by a stranger. Like and subscribe for heart-pounding twists. Don't miss our latest video. The rain-slicked streets of New York gleamed under flickering streetlights as Kate Hudson sprinted through the labyrinth of alleys, her breath ragged, heart hammering like a war drum. Behind her, the screech of tires and the guttural roar of an engine signaled her pursuers were closing in. She clutched her phone, the screen still glowing with the Google Maps image that had shattered her world. Her daughter, Emily Watson, missing for 2 years, standing hand in hand with a man in a suit outside an abandoned church. Kate's sneakers slapped against the pavement, each step a desperate plea to reach the truth. 2 years ago, in 2013, 7-year-old Emily had vanished from her school playground in Brooklyn during recess. The cameras were mysteriously disabled, no witnesses stepped forward, and the police found nothing, no ransom note, no trace, just a void where a vibrant child once stood. Kate, a single mother and graphic designer, had spent every waking moment since then chasing leads that led nowhere, her hope dwindling like a candle in a storm. But tonight, everything changed. While idly scrolling Google Maps, zooming into the desolate area around an old church in the Bronx, she'd seen a satellite image capturing a man and a girl in a pink dress. The face was blurry, but the dress, the posture, the way the girl's hair fell, it was Emily. Kate knew it in her bones. She'd jumped into her car, driven through the pouring rain, and parked near the church, only to be spotted by 2 men in a black SUV. Now, as she darted between dumpsters and chain-link fences, their shouts echoed behind her. "Stop her!" one growled, his voice cutting through the storm. Kate's lungs burned, but she couldn't stop not when she was this close. She rounded a corner, slipping on wet asphalt, and crashed into a chain-link gate. It rattled but held firm, locked. The SUV's headlights swept across the alley, pinning her like a moth. She fumbled with her phone, dialing the only person she trusted to help. Leonardo DiCaprio, a private investigator with a reputation for finding the unfindable. "Leo, it's Kate," she gasped as the line connected. "I found her Emily on Google Maps. I'm at the church in the Bronx. They're after me." The SUV screeched to a halt, doors slamming as 2 men in dark jackets emerged, their faces obscured by the rain. "Kate, get out of there!" Leonardo's voice crackled through the phone, sharp with urgency. "I'm 10 minutes away. Hide." But there was nowhere to hide. The men advanced, one pulling a knife that glinted under the streetlight. Kate's mind raced. She hadn't survived 2 years of grief to die now. She grabbed a rusted pipe from the ground, swinging it with all her strength as the first man lunged. The pipe connected with his shoulder, sending him staggering, but the second man was faster, grabbing her wrist and twisting until the pipe clattered away. "You shouldn't have come here," he snarled, his breath hot against her face. Kate kicked, her heel catching his knee, and broke free, scrambling over the gate in a surge of adrenaline. She landed hard on the other side, pain shooting through her ankle, but kept running toward the church's silhouette looming in the distance. Its spire pierced the stormy sky, a relic of a forgotten era. She didn't know what she'd find inside, but if Emily was there or any clue to her daughter's fate, she'd tear the place apart. The men were climbing the gate now, their curses mixing with the thunder. Kate reached the church's weathered doors, shoving them open with her shoulder. The interior was dark, reeking of mildew and decay, with pews overturned and stained glass windows shattered. She stumbled forward, her phone's flashlight casting jittery beams across the walls. "Emily," she called, her voice swallowed by the vast emptiness. No answer, but a faint creak came from the shadows of floorboard. A door, something alive. Kate froze, her pulse deafening. Was it Emily, or the men chasing her? Before she could move, a hand clamped over her mouth, and a low voice whispered, "Don't scream. I'm here to help." She spun, ready to fight, but the man released her, stepping into the dim light. It was Leonardo DiCaprio, his leather jacket soaked, eyes sharp with focus. "We've got seconds before they're inside," he said, pulling a gun from his holster. "What the hell did you find on that map?" Kate thrust her phone at him, the image of Emily and the stranger burning into his retinas. Leonardo's jaw tightened. "This changes everything," he muttered, just as the church doors burst open, and the 2 men stormed in, weapons drawn. Leonardo shoved Kate behind a pew, firing a warning shot that echoed like a cannon. The men dove for cover, returning fire, and the church erupted into chaos, bullets splintering wood, glass raining down. Kate's screams lost in the gunfire. She crawled toward the altar, desperate for cover, her mind fixed on one truth. Emily was alive, and nothing would stop her from finding her daughter. The air inside the abandoned Bronx church was thick with dust, and the acrid sting of gunpowder as Kate Hudson crouched behind a splintered pew, her heart pounding so fiercely she thought it might burst. Bullets whizzed overhead, tearing into the decaying walls, while Leonardo DiCaprio returned fire, his gunshots precise but measured, each one a calculated warning to the two men who'd stormed in after them. The men, clad in dark jackets, moved like predators, weaving between shadows, their silenced pistols spitting deadly whispers. Kate's phone, still clutched in her trembling hand, cast a faint glow, the Google Maps image of her daughter Emily Watsona, 7-year-old lost to the world, 2 years ago, burning into her mind. She couldn't lose focus. Not now. Not when she was so close to unraveling the mystery of that haunting satellite photo. Emily, hand in hand, with a suited stranger outside this very church. Leonardo grabbed her arm, yanking her toward the altar as a bullet grazed the pew, showering them with wood shards. "Stay low," he hissed, his eyes scanning the darkness. The church's vast interior offered little cover-broken stained-glass windows let in slivers of stormy light, illuminating overturned hymnals and cobwebbed chandeliers. Kate's ankle throbbed from her earlier fall, but adrenaline drowned the pain. She followed Leonardo, crawling past a toppled crucifix, her fingers brushing against something cold and metallic embedded in the floor, a rusted handle, barely visible under layers of grime. "Leo, here," she whispered urgently, tugging at it. He glanced back, firing another shot to keep their pursuers at bay, then nodded. Together, they pried open the trapdoor, revealing a narrow staircase descending into pitch blackness. The men's footsteps grew louder, their shouts bouncing off the walls. "They went that way," one barked. Leonardo shoved Kate toward the stairs. "Go," he ordered, covering her descent with his gun trained on the approaching shadows. Kate stumbled down the creaking steps, her phone's flashlight cutting through the gloom, revealing damp stone walls and a faint stench of mildew. Leonardo followed, pulling the trapdoor shut behind them, plunging them into near-total darkness. The muffled thuds of boots above told them the men were searching, but the trapdoor's hidden latch held for now. At the bottom of the stairs, Kate's light swept across a cavernous basement, its concrete floor littered with crates, rusted filing cabinets, and stacks of yellowed documents. Her breath caught as she spotted a child's drawing pinned to a corkboard, a crude sketch of a pink dress, eerily similar to the one Emily wore in the Google Maps image. "Leo, look at this," she said, her voice trembling. He joined her, his jaw tightening as he examined the drawing, then rifled through a nearby crate, pulling out a folder stamped with a strange Symbol coiled snake encircling a cross. Inside were photos, grainy and faded, of children, their names scribbled in red ink. Kate's heart sank as she scanned them, praying Emily's face wasn't among them, but Leonardo's sharp intake of breath confirmed her worst fear. He held up a photo of a smiling girl with familiar brown curls, labeled Emily Watson, 2013. Kate's knees buckled, but she forced herself to stay upright, rage overtaking grief. "They knew her," she whispered, clutching the photo. "They took her." Leonardo's eyes darted to the stairs as a loud bang echoed. The men were trying to break through the trapdoor. "We're not alone down here," he muttered, motioning to a faint light flickering deeper in the basement. They moved cautiously, Kate's flashlight revealing more evidence. Medical records, maps marked with red pins, and a ledger listing dates and payments, some as recent as last week. The basement wasn't just a hideout, it was a nerve center for something sinister. As they approached the flickering light, a low hum grew louder, like machinery. They rounded a corner and froze. A steel door, reinforced and padlocked, stood before them, the hum emanating from within. Kate's pulse raced. Emily could be behind that door. Before she could act, a shadow lunged from the darkness, tackling Leonardo to the ground. Kate screamed, swinging her flashlight like a club, but the attacker, a wiry man with wild eyes, dodged and grabbed her wrist, twisting until she dropped the phone. Leonardo grappled with the man, landing a brutal punch that sent him sprawling, but the noise drew attention. The trapdoor above splintered open, and the two men from the church descended, weapons raised. Kate scrambled for her phone. its light catching a glint of metal on the flora, discarded crowbar. She seized it, swinging with all her strength as one of the newcomers charged. The crowbar connected with his arm, eliciting a howl of pain, but the second man was on her, his gun pressed against her temple. "Drop it," he growled. Leonardo, now on his feet, aimed his own gun, but the standoff was broken by a new sounder metallic clang from the steel door. It creaked open, revealing a figure in silhouette, too tall to be Emily. "Enough," the figure said, voice cold and commanding. Kate's blood ran cold as the man stepped into the light, his face obscured by a hood, but his presence radiated menace. "You've seen too much," he said, raising a device that hummed with electricity. Before Kate could react, a jolt of pain seared through her, and the world went black. Kate Hudson's eyes fluttered open to a throbbing headache, and the gritty taste of dirt in her mouth. Her body slumped against a cold concrete wall. The basement's dim light flickered, casting jagged shadows across the steel door where the hooded figure had stood moments. Was it hours ago? Her wrists ached, bound tightly with zip ties, and her phone was gone, leaving her blind to the Google Maps image that had driven her here. Her daughter, Emily Watson, captured in a satellite photo, hand in hand with a stranger outside this cursed Bronx church. Leonardo DiCaprio was nowhere in sight, and the silence was deafening, broken only by the distant drip of water and the faint hum from behind the steel door. Kate's mind raced, replaying the chaos gunfire in the church, the trapdoor to the basement, the chilling discovery of Emily's photo among files of missing children, and the ambush that ended with a jolt of electricity knocking her out. She tested her restraints, wincing as the plastic bit into her skin, but froze when footsteps echoed nearby, slow and deliberate. A figure emerged from the shadows, lean and disheveled, with sunken eyes and a crooked smirk. It was Johnny Depp, a man she vaguely recognized from news reports, a drifter who'd once been questioned about Emily's disappearance in 2013, but released for lack of evidence. "You're awake," he said, his voice low, almost amused. "Thought you'd be out longer." Kate's blood boiled, her grief and rage coalescing into a single burning question. "Where's my daughter?" She spat, struggling against the zip ties. Johnny crouched, his face inches from hers, reeking of stale cigarettes. "Emily's alive," he said, pausing as if savoring her reaction. "But you're digging a hole you can't climb out of." Before she could respond, he pulled a burner phone from his pocket, its screen glowing with a text. "Meet at the market. Bring her. Now." Kate's heart lurched. Bring her. Was he talking about her or Emily? Johnny cut her zip ties with a pocket knife, his grip bruising as he yanked her to her feet. "Move," he ordered, shoving her toward a rusted exit door at the basement's far end. Kate stumbled, her legs shaky, but her mind sharpened with every step. She needed to escape, to find Leonardo, to get to Emily. The door led to a narrow alley behind the church, where a beat-up sedan idled in the rain. Johnny pushed her into the passenger seat, climbing in beside her and peeling out onto the slick streets of New York. The city blurred past neon signs, honking cabs, oblivious crowds while Kate scanned for an opportunity. "You worked for them," she said, piecing it together. "The people who took Emily. Why help me now?" Johnny's smirk faded, his knuckles whitening on the wheel. "I was in too deep like you are now, but I'm done being their dog." His words carried a flicker of sincerity, but Kate didn't trust him, not yet. They pulled into the chaotic heart of a Chinatown night market, the air thick with the smell of fried dumplings and diesel. Stalls lined the streets, their lanterns swaying in the wind, while shoppers jostled under umbrellas. Johnny parked and dragged Kate into the crowd, his knife pressed discreetly against her back. "One wrong move, and you're done," he muttered. Kate's eyes darted, searching for a way out, when she spotted a familiar figure weaving through the throng. Leonardo DiCaprio, his leather jacket torn, a fresh cut above his eye. He'd survived the basement ambush. Their eyes locked for a split second, and Kate knew she had to act. She elbowed Johnny hard, twisting away as he cursed, and bolted into the market, weaving between stalls, knocking over crates of fish and fruit to slow him down. Shouts erupted behind her, Johnny and another man, maybe one of the church gunmen, giving chase. Kate's lungs burned as she ducked under a tarp, only to crash into a stack of metal trays, the clatter betraying her position. Johnny was on her in seconds, grabbing her hair and yanking her back, but Leonardo appeared, tackling him into a noodle stand. The two men grappled, fists flying, as Kate scrambled to her feet, snatching Johnny's fallen knife. She hesitated, the blade trembling in her hand. When the second pursuer emerged, gun raised. "Drop it," he barked, but Kate dove behind a stall, the bullet grazing her shoulder, searing like fire. The market exploded into chaos, shoppers screaming, vendors fleeing. Leonardo landed a brutal kick, sending Johnny sprawling, then grabbed Kate's arm. "We need to move," he yelled, pulling her through the maze of stalls. They sprinted toward an alley, the gunman's footsteps pounding behind. Kate's shoulder bled, but she pushed through the pain, her mind fixed on Johnny's words, "Emily's alive." As they rounded a corner, a black van screeched to a stop, blocking their path. The hooded figure from the basement stepped out, flanked by two armed men. "You're persistent," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "But persistence gets you killed." Leonardo raised his gun, but Kate saw the trap. They were outnumbered, outgunned. She clutched the knife, ready to fight, when Johnny staggered into view, bloodied but standing. "They're using you," he shouted at the hooded man, his voice raw. "Just like they used me." The words hung in the air, a spark of doubt in the hooded man's eyes. But before anyone could react, a gunshot rang out, and Johnny collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. Kate Hudson's shoulder burned, the graze from the bullet in the Chinatown market, sending jolts of pain with every step as she and Leonardo DiCaprio sprinted through the rain-soaked alley, the black van's headlights fading behind them. Johnny Depp's final words. "They're using you," echoed in her mind, mingling with the image that had set her on this path. Her daughter, Emily Watson, captured on Google Maps, hand in hand with a stranger outside a derelict Bronx church. The hooded man's cold threat and Johnny's lifeless body on the pavement were proof this was no ordinary kidnapping. It was a web of secrets, and Kate was entangled. Leonardo gripped her arm, pulling her into the shadows of a shuttered bodega as sirens wailed in the distance, drawn by the market chaos. His face was bruised, the cut above his eye still bleeding, but his focus was razor-sharp. "We can't go back to the church," he said, checking his gun's magazine. "They'll be waiting, but I know someone who can help." Kate's breath hitched, her mind racing. 2 years ago, in 2013, Emily had vanished from her Brooklyn school playground, the cameras inexplicably disabled, leaving no trace. The basement files they'd found photos of missing children, including Emily pointed to a larger operation, one Johnny had been part of. Now, with him dead, their only lead was Leonardo's contact. "Who is he?" Kate asked, wincing as she pressed her hand to her wound. Leonardo's eyes darkened. "Christian Bale, ex-cop, worked missing persons in the 90s. He knows things the NYPD buried." They slipped into a subway station, blending with the late-night crowd, and boarded a train to Queens. Kate's shoulder throbbed, but she refused to slow down, not when Emily might still be alive. The train's rumble couldn't drown out her fear or her fury. Christian Bale lived in a run-down apartment above a pawn shop, its windows boarded, the air heavy with cigarette smoke and regret. He opened the door, a grizzled man in his 50s, his eyes narrowing at Leonardo. "You're still dragging ghosts, DiCaprio," he growled, but stepped aside to let them in. The apartment was a shrine to old cases files stacked on tables, photos pinned to walls, a map of New York dotted with red pins. Kate's gaze locked on one pin near the Bronx church. "Talk," she demanded, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. Bale lit a cigarette, exhaling slowly. "In '95, kids started disappearing 6, 7 at a time. No bodies, no ransoms. Cops called it runaways, but I found patterns, drop-off points, abandoned buildings, a symbol." He tapped a file, revealing a sketch of a coiled snake around across the same symbol from the church basement. Kate's stomach churned. "You knew about this and did nothing?" Bale's jaw tightened. "I got too close. They framed me for evidence tampering, kicked me out. Whoever's behind this, they've got people everywhere. Cops, politicians." Leonardo leaned forward. "The church in the Bronx. It's active again. We found files, photos, Emily Watson's among them." Bale's eyes flicked to Kate, softening for a moment. "Your kid, I'm sorry, but if she's in their system, she's part of something bigger." He pulled a key from a drawer, tossing it to Leonardo. "Old evidence locker, abandoned precinct in Harlem. I stashed what I could before they burned me. Start there. Kate wanted to scream, to demand more, but Bale's haunted look told her he'd given all he could. They left, hailing a cab to Harlem, the city's lights blurring past like a fever dream. The precinct was a crumbling relic, its windows smashed, walls tagged with graffiti. Leonardo picked the lock, and they slipped inside, their flashlights cutting through the dark. The evidence locker was a steel vault, its door ajar, as if someone had been there recently. Inside, they found boxes of files, surveillance photos, and a ledger listing names, children, dates, and coded locations. Kate's hands shook as she found Emily's name, dated 2013 with a note. Transferred. Site B. Site B, she whispered. Where is it? Leonardo rifled through another box, pulling out a map with a red circle around a warehouse on the Hudson River. Before they could process it, a creak echoed from the precinct's entrance. Flashlights swept the halls, followed by hushed voices. They're here, one said. Kate's pulse spiked. Someone had followed them, or worse, been tipped off. Leonardo grabbed the map and a handful of files, shoving them into his jacket. Out the back, he whispered, leading her through a maze of corridors. They reached a fire exit, but as Kate pushed it open, a figure blocked their path. A man in a suit, his face hidden by the dark, holding a silenced pistol. You're digging up old graves, he said, his voice chillingly calm. Kate clutched the ledger, her only link to Emily, as Leonardo raised his gun. The man smiled, unfazed. You think you can stop this? It's bigger than you. A second figure emerged behind him, and Kate's blood ran cold. It was the hooded man from the church. Before she could react, a gunshot rang out, not from Leonardo but from the shadows. The suited man staggered, clutching his chest, and the hooded man vanished into the dark. Christian Bale stepped into view, a revolver in his hand, his face grim. I told you, he said. They're everywhere. Kate's relief was short-lived as more flashlights closed in, and the three of them bolted into the night. The warehouse map their only hope. The Hudson River's black waters churned under a moonless sky as Kate Hudson crouched behind a rusted shipping container, her shoulder wound pulsing with every heartbeat. The warehouse map from the Harlem precinct, now crumpled in her pocket, had led them here, a sprawling dockyard in Brooklyn, its skeletal cranes looming like sentinels over stacks of cargo. Leonardo DiCaprio, his gun drawn, scanned the shadows, while Christian Bale, still gripping the revolver that had saved them from the suited man, flanked her other side. The ledger's note, Emily Watson, transferred, sight burned in Kate's mind, fueling her resolve. 2 years ago, her 7-year-old daughter vanished from a Brooklyn playground, and the Google Maps image of Emily with a stranger outside a Bronx church had reignited her hope. Now, this dockyard was their best shot at finding her. The air reeked of oil and salt, pierced by the distant clang of metal and the low hum of a ship's engine. Leonardo pointed to a massive warehouse, its windows dark but for a faint glow seeping from the roof. That's it, he whispered. Site B. Kate's heart raced. Emily could be inside, alive, scared, waiting. But the dockyard wasn't empty. Figures moved in the distance, armed men patrolling with military precision, their radios crackling. Bale's face was grim. This isn't just a hideout, he muttered. It's a fortress. They crept forward, weaving between containers, the cold metal biting Kate's palms. Her shoulder screamed, but she pushed through, driven by the image of Emily's brown curls, her pink dress. They reached the warehouse's side entrance, a heavy steel door with a keypad lock. Leonardo pulled a small device from his Jaquita lockpick rigged with wire sand, went to work, the keypad beeping softly. Bale kept watch, his revolver steady, but Kate's nerves frayed as a patrol's flashlight swept dangerously close. The lock clicked, and they slipped inside, the warehouse's interior swallowing them in darkness. Forklifts and crates loomed like ghosts, and a faint whimper echoed from deeper within. Kate froze, her breath catching. Emily? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Leonardo grabbed her arm, urging silence, but the sound came again, a child's cry. Kate's restraint shattered. She bolted toward the sound, ignoring Leonardo's hissed warning. She rounded a stack of crates and stopped dead. A metal cage sat in the center of the warehouse, holding 3 children, their faces pale, eyes wide with fear. None were Emily, but Kate's heart broke all the same. Before she could move, floodlights blazed on, blinding her. "Drop your weapons," a voice boomed, and armed men emerged from the shadows, rifles trained. Leonardo and Bale raised their guns, but they were outnumbered, at least 10-3. Kate's hands shook, but she stood her ground, the children's terrified faces fueling her defiance. "Where's my daughter?" she shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. A man stepped forward. Not the hooded figure from the church, but someone new, his suit pristine, his smile cold. "You're Kate Hudson," he said, as if greeting an old friend. Persistent, like your friend Johnny Depp. Pity he didn't know when to quit. Kate's blood boiled at the mention of Johnny, gunned down in Chinatown for turning on his masters. "Tell me where Emily is," she demanded, her voice raw. The man chuckled, gesturing to the cage. "These are the lucky ones. Your girl? She's special. Site B's just a stopover." Before Kate could process his words, Bale fired, his bullet grazing the man's arm. Chaos erupted, gunfire exploded, bullets ricocheting off crates, the children screaming. Kate dove for cover, scrambling toward the cage as Leonardo and Bale returned fire, their shots precise but desperate. She reached the cage, fumbling with the lock, whispering to the children, "You're safe now." But a hand grabbed her, yanking her back. The suited man, blood dripping from his arm, his face twisted with rage. He pressed a knife to her throat, dragging her toward a loading dock where a ship waited, its gangway lowered. "You want Emily," he snarled. "She's on that ship, but you're not." Kate struggled, her nails clawing at his arm, when Leonardo tackled him, the knife clattering away. The two men grappled, trading blows. As Kate stumbled to her feet, her eyes locked on the ship. She ran, ignoring the gunfire behind her, the shouts, the pain in her shoulder. The gangway swayed under her weight as she boarded, the ship's deck slick with seawater. She searched frantically, calling Emily's name, but found only empty cabins and locked doors. A muffled sob stopped her cold. She followed it to a storage hold, where a small figure huddled in the dark, bound and gagged. Kate's heart leaped. It was Emily, her face bruised but alive. She tore off the gag, pulling her daughter into her arms, tears streaming. "Mommy's here," she whispered, cutting the ropes with a shard of metal. But their reunion was cut short. The suited man, bloodied but standing, appeared at the hold's entrance, his gun raised. "You don't get to win," he said, finger on the trigger. Before he could fire, Bale's revolver barked from behind, and the man collapsed, a bullet through his chest. Kate clutched Emily, shielding her, as Leonardo and Bale fought their way to the hold, the remaining gunmen retreating under their onslaught. But the ship's engine roared to life, and the gangway began to rise. "They're leaving," Leonardo shouted. Kate carried Emily, her legs burning, and leaped for the gangway, Bale and Leonardo covering her. They hit the dock hard, rolling as bullets sparked around them. The ship pulled away, its lights fading into the fog, taking any answers with it. Kate held Emily tight, her daughter's warmth the only thing keeping her grounded. But she knew this wasn't over. Site B was a dead end, and Emily's captors were still out there. Kate Hudson clung to her daughter Emily Watson, the 7-year-old's trembling frame pressed against her as they huddled in the back of Leonardo DiCaprio's battered sedan, speeding away from the Brooklyn dockyard. The ship that had held Emily was now a fading speck in the fog, carrying its secrets into the night. Christian Bale, grim-faced in the passenger seat, reloaded his revolver, his eyes scanning the rear-view mirror for pursuers. The warehouse map, the ledger with Emily's name, and the coiled snake symbol all pointed to a conspiracy far larger than a single kidnapping. 2 years ago, Emily's disappearance from her school playground had shattered Kate's world, and the Google Maps image of her daughter with a stranger outside a Bronx church had reignited her fight. Now, holding Emily, Kate felt a fragile hope, but the suited man's words on the ship she's special gnawed at her. What did they want with her daughter? Leonardo pulled into a safe house in Staten Island, a nondescript house with boarded windows and a steel-reinforced door. Inside, Kate gently cleaned Emily's bruises, her heart breaking at the fear in her daughter's eyes. "You're safe now," she whispered, but Emily's silence spoke louder than words. Bale brewed coffee, his hands steady despite the night's chaos, while Leonardo spread the stolen files across a table, their pages stained with blood and secrets. "We need to know what special means," Leonardo said, his voice taut, and why they moved her to Site B. Kate tucked Emily into a cot, stroking her hair until she drifted into uneasy sleep, then joined the men. The ledger listed dozens of children, their names paired with cryptic codes. Test subject, Phase 2, viable. Emily's entry had a star next to it, dated just before her rescue. Kate's stomach churned. "They're experimenting," she said, her voice shaking. "On kids." Bale nodded, his face etched with guilt. "In the 90s, I found medical records, blood tests, genetic profiles. Thought it was a trafficking ring, but it's worse. They're after something specific." Before Kate could press him, a burner phone in Leonardo's pocket buzzed, the same model Johnny Depp had used in Chinatown before his death. Leonardo answered, his face hardening as a distorted voice crackled through. "You have the girl," it said, "but you're not safe. Check the files. Look for Orion." The line went dead. Kate rifled through the files, her hands trembling, until she found a document stamped Project Orion. It detailed a program targeting children with rare genetic markers, selected for enhancement through experimental drugs. Emily's name was listed, her blood type flagged as a match. Kate's vision blurred with tears and rage. Her daughter wasn't just a victim, she was a prize. Leonardo's jaw clenched. "This goes high corporate, maybe government," Bale snorted. "Told you, they've got people everywhere." But Kate's focus shifted to a name scrawled in the margins, Dr. Scarlett Johansson. A contact, a lead, someone who knew about Orion. They traced her to a private lab in Manhattan, a sleek facility guarded by security cameras and armed patrols. Under cover of darkness, they infiltrated the lab, Leonardo disabling the alarms while Bale took out a guard with a silenced shot. Kate, driven by fury, led the way. Her shoulder wound a dull ache compared to her need for answers. Inside, the lab was a sterile maze of glass walls and humming machines, vials of glowing liquid lining the shelves. They found Scarlett Johansson in a secure office, a woman in her 40s with sharp features and a calm demeanor that unnerved Kate. "I expected you sooner," Scarlett said, unfazed by their guns. "Emily's special, isn't she?" Kate lunged, grabbing Scarlett's collar. "What did you do to her?" Scarlett didn't flinch. "Not me, them. Orion's been running for decades, perfecting humans, or so they claim. Emily's DNA is a key." She gestured to a monitor displaying genetic sequences, Emily's profile highlighted. Kate's heart sank. Her daughter was a lab rat in a game she didn't understand. Before Scarlett could explain further, an alarm blared, red lights flashing. "You were followed," Scarlett said, her voice cold. Armed men stormed the lab, their boots pounding like war drums. Leonardo fired, dropping 2, but more poured in, their rifles spitting bullets. Kate dragged Scarlett toward an exit, demanding, "Where's the head of Orion?" Scarlett smirked, even as glass shattered around them. "Closer than you think." Bale kicked open a fire door, leading them into a stairwell. But the truth hit Kate like a freight train. Someone close had betrayed them. Her mind flashed to her ex-husband, Orlando Bloom, who'd vanished after Emily's disappearance, claiming grief. He'd known too much, been too quick to give up. As they fought their way out, bullets grazing their heels, Kate spotted a familiar figure among the attackers. Orlando, his face hard, a gun in his hand. "Kate," he said, his voice devoid of warmth, "you should have let her go." Kate's world shattered anew, her husband's betrayal cutting deeper than any bullet. Leonardo tackled Orlando, but the lab's security overwhelmed them, forcing a retreat. Kate, clutching the Orion files, vowed to end this, for Emily, for the truth, even as Orlando's cold eyes haunted her escape. Kate Hudson's heart pounded like a war drum as she gripped the stolen Orion files, their pages heavy with the truth about her daughter, Emily Watson, a 7-year-old marked as a genetic prize in a decades-long experiment. The Manhattan lab's alarm still echoed in her ears. Orlando Bloom's cold betrayal, her ex-husband, revealed as a traitor cutting deeper than the bullet graze on her shoulder. Now she, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Christian Bale raced through New York's underbelly, their stolen van weaving through traffic toward a remote estate in Westchester, pinpointed in the Orion files as the nerve center of the conspiracy. Emily sat beside Kate, her small hands clutching her mother's, her eyes haunted but alive, rescued from a Brooklyn dockyard but still in danger. The Google Maps image that started it all, Emily, with a stranger outside a Bronx church, had led them here, to the heart of a machine that stole children for science. Leonardo's knuckles whitened on the wheel, his face bruised from their lab escape. "This ends tonight," he said, his voice steel. Bale, reloading his revolver, nodded. "They've got private security, maybe worse. Stay sharp." The estate loomed ahead, a sprawling mansion behind iron gates, its windows dark, grounds patrolled by armed guards and dogs. Kate's mind raced Orlando's words. "You should have let her go," fueled her rage. He'd been part of Orion, profiting from their daughter's suffering. The van stopped a mile out, hidden in a copse of trees. Leonardo handed Kate a pistol, its weight foreign but necessary. "For Emily," he said. She nodded, her fear swallowed by resolve. They moved through the woods, shadows among shadows. Bale's silenced shots dropping 2 guards before they reached the perimeter. Leonardo cut through the fence, and they slipped inside, the mansion's silhouette a monolith against the starry sky. The files had named this place Site A, Orion's headquarters, where children like Emily were processed, tested, and shipped. Kate's breath hitched as they neared a side entrance, its keypad glowing. Leonardo's lockpick device hummed, but a guard rounded the corner, his radio crackling. Bale tackled him, snapping his neck with brutal efficiency, but the radio's static drew attention. "We're made," Bale hissed. They burst through the door, guns raised, into a marble foyer lined with portraits, cold-eyed men and women, the architects of Orion. A staircase spiraled upward, but muffled cries came from below. Kate's heart leaped children. She led the way, descending into a basement that reeked of antiseptic, its corridors lined with steel doors. Behind one they found a lab, machines humming, vials of glowing liquid stacked like trophies. 5 children, none older than 10, sat in cages, their eyes hollow. Emily whimpered, clinging to Kate, who whispered, "We'll save them." Leonardo shot the lock off a cage, freeing the kids, but alarms blared, red lights flashing. Footsteps thundered above guards, dozens of them. Bale barricaded the door, but it wouldn't hold. "Get the kids out," he shouted, firing through a crack as guards breached the foyer. Kate guided the children toward a service tunnel, Leonardo covering their rear, his bullets dropping 2 attackers. The tunnel led to a garage, where a black SUV waited, keys in the ignition. Kate buckled Emily and the others inside, her hands shaking, but as she turned, Orlando Bloom stepped from the shadows, his gun aimed at her heart. "You're ruining everything," he said, his voice devoid of the man she'd once loved. Kate raised her pistol, her hand steady despite the ache in her chest. "You sold our daughter," she spat. Orlando's eyes flickered guilt, maybe, but he didn't lower his gun. Before either could fire, Leonardo tackled him, the 2 men crashing into a workbench, tools scattering. Kate hesitated, torn between helping and protecting the children, but Emily's cry snapped her focus. She climbed into the driver's seat, the kids' terrified sobs filling the air, and floored the gas, smashing through the garage door. Guards fired, bullets pinging off the SUV's frame, but Kate swerved, tearing through the estate's grounds. In the rearview mirror, she saw Leonardo drag Orlando to his feet, only for a new figure to emerge, the hooded man from the church, his face finally visible, Robert Downey Jr., a billionaire rumored to fund black market science. "You can't stop progress," Robert shouted, raising a rifle. Bale appeared, his revolver barking, and Robert staggered, blood blooming on his chest. But more guards swarmed, forcing Leonardo and Bale to retreat. Kate's SUV burst through the gates, tires screeching as she hit the highway, the children safe but the battle unfinished. Leonardo's voice crackled through a stolen radio. "We're behind you. Downey's down, but Orion's not dead." Kate glanced at Emily, her daughter's face pale but fierce, and vowed to burn Orion to the ground. The mansion's lights faded, but the war for justice had just begun. Kate Hudson's hands trembled on the steering wheel of the stolen SUV. Her daughter Emily Watson curled against her side, the other rescued children whispering in the back seat as they sped down the Westchester Highway. The Orion estate's flames flickered in the rearview mirror, a fading scar of the battle that had nearly cost them everything. Leonardo DiCaprio's voice crackled through the radio, strained but steady. "We're clear, Kate. Head to the safe house." Christian Bale's gruff tone followed. "Downey's dead, but Orion's got more heads. 2 years ago, Emily's disappearance from a Brooklyn playground had shattered Kate's world, and the Google Maps image of her with a stranger outside a Bronx church had sparked this relentless hunt. Now, with Emily safe, Kate's heart ached with both relief and rage. Orion's experiments, her ex-husband Orlando Bloom's betrayal, and Robert Downey Jr. His empire of cruelty still cast long shadows. She pulled into the Staten Island safe house, its dim lights a beacon in the dawn. Leonardo and Bale arrived minutes later, battered but alive, their stolen files spread across the table. Emily clung to Kate, her silence a reminder of the trauma she'd endured, but her small hand squeezed her mother's, a spark of resilience. The other children pale, frightened but free were wrapped in blankets, their eyes searching for hope. Kate knelt before Emily, brushing back her curls. "You're home," she whispered, tears falling. Emily nodded, her voice a fragile thread. "I knew you'd come." Leonardo interrupted, his face grim. "Orion's not done. Downey was a front. The files name a board executives, senators, even a judge." Bale snorted, lighting a cigarette. "Same bastards I chased in the 90s. They've got money, power, and no conscience." Kate's resolve hardened. She'd saved Emily, but Orion's reach threatened countless others. The files detailed Project Orion's scopedecades of abductions, genetic experiments, children like Emily targeted for their DNA. One name stood out, Charlize Theron, a reclusive philanthropist whose charities masked Orion's funding. Kate, Leonardo, and Bale devised a planet, a raid, but exposure. Leonardo's contacts in the press, paired with Bale's old NYPD allies, could amplify the truth. They spent days compiling evidence, Kate typing until her fingers ached, while Emily drew pictures of her ordeal, her crayons tracing memories of cages and needles. A therapist, brought in by Leonardo, began helping the children, their stories corroborating the files. Kate watched Emily laugh for the first time in years, a fragile sound that fueled her fight. The breakthrough came when Bale hacked a server linked to Charlize Theron's network, uncovering emails tying her to Orion's board. Kate insisted on confronting her, needing to see the face of the monster who'd orchestrated her daughter's pain. They tracked Charlize to a Manhattan penthouse, its glass walls overlooking the city she'd helped corrupt. Security was tight, but Leonardo's charm and Bale's brute force got them inside. Charlize, elegant and unruffled, greeted them with a smile. "You've caused quite a stir," she said, sipping wine. Kate's voice shook with fury. "You stole my daughter. You destroyed lives." Charlize shrugged. "Progress requires sacrifice." Before Kate could lunge, Leonardo held her back, his gun trained on Charlize. "It's over," he said. "The files are with the FBI, the press, everyone." Charlize's smile faltered as her phone buzzed, news alerts flashing. Orion exposed. Child abduction ring linked to elite. She lunged for a hidden panel, but Bale was faster, pinning her to the floor. "You're done," he growled. The FBI stormed in hours later, tipped off by Leonardo's contacts. Charlize and her allies were arrested, their empire crumbling under the weight of evidence. Kate watched the headlines break, her heart heavy, but lifted justice wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Orlando Bloom, captured at the estate, faced trial, his betrayal laid bare. Kate shielded Emily from the media storm, moving them to a quiet town upstate, where green fields replaced concrete. Therapy helped Emily heal, her drawings turning from cages to flowers, her laughter growing stronger. Kate rebuilt too, her nightmares fading as she volunteered with missing children's organizations, using her pain to fuel change. Leonardo visited often, his wry smile a reminder of their shared fight, while Bale, ever the loner, sent postcards from the road, chasing new ghosts. One evening, Kate and Emily sat on their porch, watching the sunset. Emily hugged her mother, whispering, "You never gave up." Kate kissed her forehead, the weight of 2 years lifting. Orion was broken, its victims avenged, and though scars remained, love had won. The world wasn't safe, but their corner of it was, and that was enough. From a Google Maps clue to a daring rescue, Kate saved Emily from a dark syndicate. Thanks for listening. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell for more thrilling tales.